Welcome folks to another video here from Decoded. Today's topic that we're going to talk about is Git. Now before I get into Git, one thing I do want to give a little warning is, folks, if you haven't checked out our last video with regards to terminals, I advise you please do so. Throughout this video we're going to be using the terminal, so I just want to make sure everyone's kind of synced up and on the same page. I want folks getting lost. So that being said, let's continue. Now, what is Git? Git, in layman's terms, is a tool that developers in the industry use to manage their source code. If you can imagine a team at a company and they have an application, we might have 5 to 8 developers working on an application at the same time. That's where Git comes in. Git is the tool that this team uses to be able to track, the changes that they're making, push the changes that they're making. So ultimately, they have a final product that the whole team has worked on. So in layman's terms, like I said, Git is just think of that. It's just a tool we use to manage our code. And I think in the example as we go along, you'll notice what I mean by that. So let's start off at the home page. As you can see, Git is free and open source. Open source being it's free to also develop. So the source code that makes up Git is actually out in GitHub, and people are free to add any type of features that they might find convenient. And if Git allows it, they could add it. So you might even see changes you want. These are, as an example, there's some companies using Git. Like I said, it's very well known in the industry. Has taken over essentially as the source control management tool or version control system tool. Now for this video, what we're going to do is essentially create a GitHub repo. A GitHub repo is hosted, or essentially is stored on GitHub servers that we don't own. But then once it's up in those servers, people are free to pull the code, make changes to the code, or push to the code, right? So ideology here, or thought here, between remote and local. GitHub being the remote branch or the remote source, and anything you work locally on your computer, as you can imagine, is the local branch. So if you guys never been to GitHub, I think you guys should check it out. GitHub is just essentially a huge repository of code. People create applications, and same way Git is a free and open source. All these projects here that you're seeing are essentially free and open source. So what we're gonna do today is actually create our own repo, and then locally make some changes that we want to push. So then when we come to our repo, we should see those changes we locally made, right? And that workflow is essentially what you would see when people or teams operate. So let's get started. First things first, make sure you just sign up for a GitHub account. It's completely free. So once you get the account, you sign in. So what we're going to do, the first step is, like I said, we're going to create a repo. Now before I do that, I do want to say this. Git init and git remote add are commands that we can use to basically do the process that we're about to do through the GitHub UI or user interface, right? These first two commands I'm not going to type because I feel it's just more of a hassle. It's easier just to go to your GitHub, create a new repo under your account. In this case, we'll just put hello world. We're going to make it private. A README is essentially a file that all repos can come with, and what a README's purpose is supposed to do is just tell the user how to launch your application or how to launch the code that essentially it is part of, right? Think of that as more or less a manual. So let's create the repository, and once we have our repository, as you can see, this is the README. Like I said, if this was a complex app that I needed to run certain commands for it to run, I would list it here. And we're going to actually go to our first command, right? So git clone. As you can see, it's like git clone is to get a copy of your source code repo. Our source code repo being this, the hello world repo on the GitHub remote servers. Go to our terminal, and I just want to create that copy. I just want to create that project here. So now, as you can see, that same repo is locally in my directory, and that same file, that README that you're seeing here, is now here. So that's step one, right? We have now taken code from a remote repo and brought it down to our local computer so we can now make changes. Next command that we could share here is git branch. Now, the way Git works is, think about it, it works through branches essentially, right? So if I do git branch right now, you're gonna see that the only branch available to me is the master. Now, in a lot of cases, master is production, aka the final version of your app or the most up-to-date version of your app. This is what people are actually using. So let's say, imagine Instagram probably has a master branch, right? And the master branch being that's what's actually out right now in your phones as you're using live time. Now that's master. Now, depending on how you set up your code, you might have a develop branch, which could represent, let's say, a beta version, right? So there might be a new version of Instagram with certain features that is not maybe out to the public yet or to the mass public, but certain people want to test. We might have those changes in the develop branch. Let's assume master is our production branch, right? We don't generally want to make changes on the master branch. We generally want to create another branch, do our changes there, and then push that branch to the master. So that's kind of what our next command does. Git checkout -b for branch. When you're telling it the -b, what it's going to do is create a branch. If, let's say, we already had a branch created, git checkout will just switch to that branch. But since we don't have a develop branch yet, what we want to do is locally create it. So git checkout b, you'll see creates a new local branch. So now when we type branch again, you see we have a master and we have a develop. Now this is perfect because we want to make our changes on develop, not on master. Next command that we see here, git status. As you might have guessed, it just tells me what my branch is, the status of my branch. And I'm going to use this command throughout the tutorial to kind of show different outputs that git status might give you, right? We're in our repo, and let's say now we want to add a brand new file called, mycode.js. JS is just is the prefix for JavaScript. So this is technically going to be a JavaScript file, right? So now we see that that's been added. Now let's see what happens if I do git status again. Now you're going to see that Git is tracking, hey, there's a new JavaScript file or a new file in general. It's not part of my remote branch. So in order to, include any changes you might be adding to this, you need to add it. I'm just doing it to show you folks, how git status changes and how it's tracked. So now let's change mycode.js. Let's just add a one-liner, right? Console.log hello world. So at this point, what we want to do is, you might guess that we want to add the file. So we git add, I tend to add period. When you say period, you're just saying add everything in this current directory. So my current directory is hello world-repo. Everything in this is, the readme and the file that I just created. Really the only file I should be adding is my code, but it doesn't harm me pressing add all. The only time you might not want to press add all is when you only want to include certain changes. So you might have made another file that you don't want to be included. You wouldn't want to add that, right? Then we want to do is we want to git commit m -m stands for message, and this is my first commit. Next step we want to do is push it, right? So what does push do? So now, like I said, we had a file called mycode.js, which has this line of code. Keep in mind, this is all local right now, right? So all these changes I made have been locally on my branch. So if I go to my remote branch or my remote repo, you will still see there is no develop branch, right? And there is no mycode.js. Nothing has been touched in my remote because all the changes I have done have been locally. So now I want to push that to those remote branches so I can see it reflect, right? And that's where git push comes in. Now this command you're seeing right now, git push -u, which stands for set upstream origin and then just develop. This is a command you have to do only one time. What you're saying here is this local branch that I have, I want you to associate it with a remote branch called develop. So I think it'll be easier to show it, but once I press that, what you're gonna see is my remote version is now gonna have that develop branch. And now we're gonna see our file right there. Let's say, we want to update the actual production version of our application with that change that I just did. Generally, what teams would do is, you would create a new pull request. So we want to merge into master from develop. And this was the commit message that I sent. If you recall, I will create that pull request, and being that I'm the user for this or the owner for this application, this would be the owner's, I guess, view, admin view, and I would be able to merge that pull request, right? Confirm merge, and now what you're gonna see is my master branch, remote master branch, now has that code. And that's pretty much in a nutshell how Git works. So now let's say my computer magically or unfortunately just, crashed. I lost all my files, including the source code that I have, but luckily I pushed it to Git. So now if I do the same git clone command, because remember that git clone just that's the URL for my repo, and I do that once again, I go into the hello world. You should see once again git branch, right? It's on my master, but if I do git branch all, you will notice I also have that develop that I pushed. I hope this video was useful to you folks. If anything was a little bit confusing, for sure let me know. Reach out to us. We will be thinking about hosting classes, maybe like a class of 5, where we have just personalized sessions. We can go through creating an application, creating something, right? We just want to kind of bring this out to the world and just show people that anybody can really do it. So keep your eyes out for that. Thank you folks for watching, and stay tuned.